Okay, we'll continue our discussion of the skeleton with the appendicular skeleton, starting at the pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle is the shoulder. It's an incomplete ring. There's two shoulder blades, the scapula, and two clavicles. They're the collarbone. And the clavicles articulate with the scapula at one end and with the sternum at the other end. They're S-shaped bones. And so what they end up doing is they brace the scapula forward. It's the only place where the upper limb is attached to the axial skeleton. In cats, they don't even exist, so that's why a cat can jump and land on their front legs, because there is no osseous attachment. But that's a whole other story. They're S-shaped so that if they break forward and they don't end up doing neurological or damage to the blood vessels that are found just below them. They're here. This is it here. Attached to the sternum at this end. And so we call this the costosternal, or the sternoclavicular joint, SC joint. This point on the scapula here is called the acromion, so that's the AC joint, the acromioclavicular joint here. Very straightforward. The scapula are the shoulder blades. They're triangular bones. There's a spine that on the back that divides into unequal portions. There's the acromion, which articulates with the clavicle. It forms the tip of the shoulder. The coracoid process projects forward. It's called coracoid because it looks like a cuckoo's beak. And then the glenoid is where the head of the humerus articulates, that makes the shoulder joint, per se. So when you look at it, it's kind of got this thing, this shape. I think it looks vaguely like a swastika or something. This is the front of it facing forwards. This is viewing it from the back. So all of these are right scapula. We tend to think of the shoulder blade, since most of it's on the back, as a bone of the back, but the coracoid process projects forward and the glenoid is the lateral side. So it really forms the back, the side, and part of the front of the shoulder. There are bones that extend from that. From the proximal to the distal, it's the humerus. And then there's two bones in the forearm called the radius and the ulna. The radius is the one that's on the thumb side. The ulna is the one that's on the pinky side. The ulna articulates with the humerus to form the hinge joint of the elbow. The radius articulates mostly with the ulna and with the carpal bones of the wrist. Your hand is attached to the radius, not to the ulna. So your wrist always follows the radius. 5 bones of the palm of your hand are called the metacarpals, and then there are 14 bones called phalanges that make up your fingers. 2 phalanges in your thumb, 3 phalanges in each of the other fingers. The distal phalanges of all 5 are called the distal phalanges. The proximal are the proximal phalanges, and on the 4 fingers there is a middle phalange, but they're all still called phalange. So the humerus, we don't really care about the head, but that's the end of the shoulder, and the elbow is the capitulum and the trochlea. It looks like this. You should be able to name that from a diagram of the skeleton like this. Radius and ulna. This is the ulna. This is the radius. There are little projections of bone called the styloid processes that ligaments attach to hold your hand basically in place. This forms the hinge of the elbow. This is what allows your forearm to rotate. So this is a pivot joint. We'll talk about the joints in an upcoming video. There are 8 bones of the carpal, the 2 rows of 4. I'm not going to make you memorize the names of them, but then there's 5 metacarpals, and then 3 phalanges and 2 on the thumb. So that these are the 8 carpal bones. You'll notice that so this is looking at the palm of the hand. At the thumb side, the proximal row is scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, and the pisiform. Then the hamate, capitate, trapezoid, and trapezium. So this is the distal row, this is the proximal row. 5 metacarpals, 14 phalanges. In the lower limb, we have the pelvic girdle. The 2 big hip bones start out life as 3 separate bones: the ischium, the ilium, and the pubis. But in adult life, they fuse together and they form one bone. There's been always controversy as what to call this bone. I learned it as the innominate bone, but that's fallen out of favor. It's the bone that has no name, innominate. And what's come into favor again is the hip bones. They articulate with each other in the front at the pubis, at the pubic symphysis, and they articulate with the sacrum on either side at the sacroiliac joints, which are the SI joints. Very important from a clinical point of view, the SI joints. So it looks like this. This is the hip bone here. This part here is the pubis. The part you sit on is the ischium, and this big blade is the ilium. Sacroiliac joint is here. Pubic symphysis is here in the front. Ilium, ischium, pubis. The acetabulum, which means vinegar cup, is a depression where the head of the femur goes. Roughly speaking, this is where the bones meet each other, but they are really fused into one bone. The difference between a male pelvis and a female pelvis has got to do with adaptations for giving birth. You'll notice that the female pelvis here is much shallower. Big oval opening here along the pelvic brim. A short sacrum, and the baby passes out through here. The pubic arch is very broad, and then the acetabulum kind of point forward. It's why women tend to bring their leg across when they're walking. It's why women are more flexible, can touch their toes, because this is a much lower pelvic brim, or crest, iliac crest. In men, the crest is a lot higher. There's a much smaller opening in the pelvic brim. The pubic arch is very pointy, it's almost V-shaped, and the acetabulum point more sideways. So in the lower limb, the femur, tibia, fibula, the patella is the kneecap. There are 7 tarsal bones, 5 metatarsals, and 14 phalanges in each leg. So the femur, the thigh bone, hip to the knee, It articulates with the tibia at the knee joint and with the hip bone at the hip joint. So it looks like this. This is the neck and the head, etc. But the diaphysis, all of these lines have got things, but this is the knee at this end. The tibia is the large one. It's weight-bearing. It forms the shin. There's a bump on it where the quadriceps muscles attach, called the tibial tuberosity, and they're very prominent on most people. The fibula is just lateral, on the lateral side of the tibia. It doesn't bear body weight. It's mostly involved with the ankle joint, the lateral malleolus, the outside of the ankle. So it actually forms support here down at the ankle joint. This is the tibia, this is the fibula. The fibula doesn't become part of the knee. In the ankle, there's 7 tarsal bones. The heel bone is the calcaneus, and the talus is the one that forms the ankle. It's the hinge joint of the ankle. Your instep is metatarsals, and each toe has 3 phalanges, except for the big toe, which is got 2, so that it looks like this. This is the talus, this is the calcaneus, then the other 5 are here. There's 3 cuneiforms, the navicular, the cuboid, for the 5. These are the metatarsals, and then the phalanges. Calcaneus, talus, navicular, cuboid, 3 cuneiforms, 5 metatarsals, 14 phalanges. That's it for appendicular skeleton. I'm expecting you to be able to identify the bones from a diagram type of thing, like just the names of the bones, not the different parts of the bones.